Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Joining us on the phones, the director of the Free Market Institute over at Texas Tech University, Dr. Ben Powell. Good morning, Dr. Powell. How are you today?
Well, Chad, I wish I could say good, but I don't think anybody can say that under the current circumstances in our country. But doing better than most, I guess, because at least I can work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do appreciate you joining us. I had the governor on earlier this morning, and, everyone, now the talk after the shutdown, the talk is when is everybody going to reopen? Georgia has decided to open this week some of their different stores. The governor here on this show said, he's going to have an announcement on the 27th, and not every county is going to be on the same timeline. Some counties are going to be a little bit different, but a lot of the counties are going to be close to the same as far as reopening. In your opinion, what does a reopening, if you will, of the economy need to look like?
It needs to be a liberation is what I think it needs to be. The government needs to cease giving us orders of who can open, when, and how. I think they need to free us to let business owners decide for themselves when they can safely operate, and customers choose to patronize those businesses as they see fit. I don't think we're going to be returning to a world of February here. We know businesses are going to all operate differently, and they have an incentive to try to minimize risk for their customers and their employees and their business, because that'll help bring the customers back and make them profitable again.
It almost sounds like you're talking about free markets.
It's funny that a director of a Free Market Institute might think like that, hey, Chad?
Well, but you have to be stunned. You have to be absolutely. I know you've written a book about socialism, and where you've seen the bread disappear from the shelves. You've seen food disappear from the shelves. You've got to be stunned that the federal government, state, local governments have just shut this thing down so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we need to make a distinction between coercive shutdowns and voluntary social distancing. One of these two things makes a lot of sense. The other is authoritarian, heavy-handed. It is causing economic ruin in your average American's life. And remember that, the goalposts have been moved on this. The whole rationale for the shutdown, or at least the major one, was we can't swamp our healthcare systems. Our local healthcare system here in Lubbock isn't swamped, so there's no rationale for this coercive shutdown.
If you were advising the mayor here, and I don't know if he's picked up the phone and called you, but if you were advising him here in Lubbock, what would you tell him to do?
I think the key stat that you'd have to be monitoring is healthcare capacity of ICU beds, ventilators, and just overall healthcare capacity within our hospital system. If that's solid, there's no reason for the government to be telling us that we can't interact. Follow the Swedish model, encourage social distancing, educate people about it, but then leave us free to choose, if you will.
For those who don't know, what has Sweden been doing that we have not done?
Sweden has not taken the heavy-handed approaches. They did close high schools and colleges and prohibit large public gatherings, but they left their businesses open. Retail establishments, there was no deciding who was essential and who wasn't. Restaurants remained open, but encouraged their people to do social distancing within them. And, of course, it's yet to, all the statistics from all countries are really hard to compare internationally or even domestically here in the United States, because a lot of it's garbage. If you simply don't know the infection rate, calculating fatality rates and stuff like that is all bogus. So the vote's not still in yet, but at least it's not obvious that Sweden's doing much worse than other Nordic countries around it who were more heavy-handed.
Visiting with Dr. Ben Powell here on the Chad Hasty Show. Does any of this worry you for the future and how governments may use their power? And when I say governments, I mean anywhere from local to state to federal, to use that power to shut down the economy and so easily shut down the economy in the future?
And it scares me how easily most Americans accepted this out of fear. Now, we're starting to see backlash across the country about it, but it's still, I'm concerned about COVID-19. I'm concerned about our economic future of your average American, and I'm also concerned about our civil liberties. And it seems like the government policy was all about one of these things, COVID, at the expense of the other two, and there was not much pushback from America on balancing this, at least initially. It's starting to be now, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, one of the criticisms that you see, at least online, and I don't know how it plays out in real debates, but if you're for even reopening, I look at Governor Abbott, he'll tweet out about reopening. You have, half the population or, half the responses that say, no, you're doing this way too soon. You want to kill everybody. The other half on responses say, why haven't you done it already? I mean, it's got to be tough for some of these folks when they're trying to make these decisions. It seems like the overall criticism of them has been, you care more about the economy than lives. But you can balance the two out, can't you?
Well, I think it's a false dichotomy, too.
Yeah.
Because the economy isn't some abstract thing. It is our lives. It's just the aggregation of us voluntarily interacting in social and trade context. Shutting it down shuts down parts of people's lives and ends some people's lives. No doubt that there will be an increase that comes from suicides, that how many, when non-essential medical practices aren't being done, people aren't getting their annual checkups and screenings the same. Yeah. That means cancer's detected later. People are going to die as a result of the shutdown, too. So it's not simply that we're saving lives. Now, I haven't seen anybody trying to balance this very well yet, but the idea of it just lives versus dollars trade-off is a false one.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. What do you think? How do we come out of this? Because I know the president, I think he's trying to be optimistic. He always seems like an optimistic guy when it comes to the economy. He thinks this thing's going to come back roaring. A lot of, economists that I've seen, I don't know how you feel about it, have said it is going to be a really bad quarter two. It's not going to be a pretty quarter three. Maybe by quarter four we pick back up. How do you think we come out of this?
Yeah, so no economist has a crystal ball on these forecasts, but my expectation, they talk about the shape of a recovery, an L, a U, a V, what the president's describing as a V, and I think that's pretty unrealistic because COVID hasn't gone away. If people reopen responsibly and are trying to manage the risk of it, it's not a full-capacity economy. Restaurants operating with half or a third of their tables is not as productive as operating with all of them. Airlines running with 10% of their customers, not as productive as what their usual capacity is. I think we have to be prepared for a kind of new normal, and it's going to be a readjustment, too. Some businesses aren't going to come back. Others need to expand. We need entrepreneurs to discover all this, and we need our labor markets to be flexible and reallocate workers between them. And meanwhile, we can't have dumb unemployment policies that pay people not to go back to work. So I think it's going to be a fairly sluggish thing. We need to be liberated, but we shouldn't expect liberation is going to bring us back to February-type economic activity.
Right. How does the economy work? I know everyone's planning on students going back to school in the fall, from the college level on down, though I have seen some colleges that are preparing for maybe that may not happen. How does the economy work or not work if massive parts of the country don't have students actually in school?
Yeah, I don't know, Chad, and I'll tell you, I have zero inside information about Texas Tech in the fall. I
think they're planning on having it at Tech, yeah.
I sure hope we reopen, and I think that's what will happen. But I also think that they were probably wise to go online for this semester. And this is, how I contrast this with a coercive shutdown. A big school of 40,000 in a city the size of Lubbock with everybody away from spring break makes a decision all on their own that, we probably shouldn't come back right now. We should go online temporary. I think that's a responsible, good type thing to do. And I think we need to come roaring back in the fall with that as best we can here and elsewhere in the country, because otherwise I think higher ed will be in a real mess if they don't get back in-person classes.
I'm going to ask you something you've probably you mentioned the paying people to be unemployed right now. You've got unemployment rates that are shooting up. I read a poll earlier today where 43% of Americans have either lost their job or they've lost wages. To me, that seems hard that you're going to stimulate an economy when 43% of people have lost money just recently. The government's done a $2.2 trillion stimulus. They keep adding money. They're probably going to have a phase 4, maybe a phase 5. what does that do to us in the future?
It puts us in a big debt trap in the future, and meanwhile doesn't stimulate the economy. You can't stimulate something you've shut down. What you need to do is liberate it and let people decide how to reopen, how to interact, and let it recover. Throwing money at these stimulus is just, most of it's a lot of interest group politics and favors to particular businesses or industries. I mean, that doesn't mean that there isn't some role if the government's forcing people to shut down right now. But the real answer is allowing them to get back to work, not stimulus bills that put the U.S. government's long-term fiscal trajectory in a horrible situation. It already was bad.
I was about to say it was already bad. Now it looks even worse. Dr. Powell, appreciate your time today. Hopefully y'all can get back up and running in a normal fashion relatively soon. And we always appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Hope to see you in a cigar bar around town soon.
Sounds good to me. That's Dr. Ben Powell here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, KFYO. He's ready to liberate the economy. I like it.